Welcome back, everybody, to another devlog for Space 64. That is a working title, which is a adventure exploration game inspired by N64 and PS1 games. Last time, we added doors and keys, and also redesigned the outside of the dungeon. Go back and check out devlog 9 if you want to see some more of that. This week is going to be a little bit of a shorter devlog, but let's jump straight into it. Okay, so to kick off this devlog, we are going to look at a UI system. I know we've talked about the HUD and the UI in previous devlogs, and a lot of people had some great ideas about how we can tweak that, such as having the energy wheel, the energy bar, which is in the top left, the blue bar, be actually like a wheel or some sort of thing next to the character, similar to like Breath of the Wild or something, where you've got the stamina wheel. I think that's a great idea, and I think that's a great step into implementing what our HUD could look like. So I'm working on that, and I'm using math shapes in the background here to do that. But while I work on this, I think I'm going to answer some questions. I've grabbed a few for later in the devlog, some questions that I like in the comments. I will answer some of those later in the devlog. I know I've already recorded some past Matt stuff as well, so you'll be hearing from past Matt as we actually go through features as well. Rather than start with one of your questions and your comments, I kind of just wanted to reiterate and talk about Space 64 a little bit and kind of my intentions for the game, because I think it's quite interesting that I spend so much time building out this world and building out these gameplay features, especially because my main goal with this game is to tell a story. My passion with games and movies and TV and all of that is story, and I really want to tell a really exciting but also sad, melancholy story that'll make you think, hopefully anyway, with this game. So there's a bunch of ways I'm going to do that. I'm going to have, obviously, the main storyline with the cutscenes and the dialogue and everything. And then there's going to be lore you can find, like data pads and stuff like that around the world. There'll also just be, like, areas where you can kind of come up with your own conclusions while you're exploring and try to figure out things from. And it's really exciting for me to be able to tell a story like that. But really, these devlogs are me building a foundation to be able to tell that story. You can't just have a game without the gameplay, right? I may as well just write a book or make a movie or something if I want to do that. There is a benefit to telling a story in the video game fashion, the medium of video games. That's why I want to do all these things. That's also why I like almost collaborating with you all in the comments. When you have ideas, I like implementing them. Like the previous devlog, I think it was devlog 8, where I added things like the tricks, and I expanded that starting area, and I revisited water and allowed you to boost across water and stuff like that. It matters for the areas where you're not going to be restricted, right, and where you're not going to be able to use the boost. So I think having that duality is really important to me, and I like the idea of being able to boost across water in the big overworld area, and then being a little bit more restricted and held back, I guess, and having to just use your wits in those more restricted areas. I'll have some more lore-based explanations for that, and I know some people have been asking me about, is there going to be a companion character in this game and all this sort of stuff, and all of that will be revealed in the future devlogs. I feel like these first 10 have been about getting the game's foundation to like phase 1, and then the next 10 are going to be about adding to that again, but then building upon what we already have, such as really polishing the combat, really polishing the enemy AI and stuff like that, because right now it's all just super basic, and everything I've been implementing so far is just the base level. Does it work? Can I make it work? Is it right for the game? They're kind of my main things, and for me, if it just feels good playing it, then I'm going to keep it, and if it doesn't, then I'm not going to. And I know there's been some debate in the comments about, well, why are you giving people boosting and gliding if we go into areas and it restricts? I feel like, think about Super Mario Sunshine, where you have those areas where the game takes FLUDD away from you and you have to just use the jumping and, Mario's base moveset. I quite like that as an idea, but I can also then see the frustration from players being like, well, why am I going to go in here if it's just going to do all of this? But it's very much about me driving players to explorable locations, and I think of it more as Epona from Ocarina of Time, where you've got this Hyrule field and you're riding around, but then there are these areas you can't go to, these towns you can't go to. She can't go into like the proper Gerudo Desert towards the Spirit Temple, she can't go into Kakariko, she can't go into Kakiri Forest, she can't go into Hyrule Castle. And I think if you think of Hyrule Field and some of its larger subzones, so like, for example, you can take Epona into Lake Hylia, that makes sense to me to have similar things in this game. We'll have this large overworld area in Planet 1. There'll be some large subzones to that where you can still boost and glide around because you're going through them naturally, but then there'll be smaller caves and passageways and chasms that are funneled by these doorways, and these doorways will then restrict your ability to boost and glide. It gives me way more freedom as a designer at that point to design more bespoke things that can't be broken by gliding and boosting. And yeah, I think that balance will then be felt in the game. You won't always be boosting, you won't always be walking. There will be a balance between the two, because I don't always want you moving at 1,000 miles an hour. And when I've said that to people, they're like, well, then why add the boosting? Because I'm like, because I want these worlds to be big to make you feel small. And I hope that makes sense. That was like a very, very long ramble while I've been working on this HUD stuff in the background. Hopefully that's been interesting to you. I did a lot of really weird things, but I will pass to Past Matt now. Hello everyone, this is Past Matt. It's been a while since I've done a Past Matt section, but I think you've probably already heard me talking about working on the HUD, the stamina wheel, energy diamond, whatever we want to call it. And you've probably seen me working on some of that while I've been talking about some other things. But let me show it in action now and how it actually works. So let's start with gliding and how that looks. If I jump off here and I start gliding, you'll see the energy wheel comes up on the left side of the character, and you can see it counting down. I still do have it in the top left corner, but it is more visually interesting to see it in that middle thing. And again, if it drops down, we'll drop down and everything, but you can see the stamina wheel will stay on the screen until it's fully recharged. And then once it's fully recharged, it'll be like, done, I can go away now. And then for boosting, let me show you. As you can see, works just the same way, but you may have noticed that as I boosted then, it shrank a little bit to kind of sync with the character. And you see, I just did a trick and I got some stamina back. See, it charges up, and there we go. It might be a little bit disorientating that it's always like attached to the character. So if you look at the camera, it's on the right and on the left. So if I show you here, like it flips sides. But I couldn't get it to sync with the character any other way than this. And I don't mind it personally. I think it's fine. It kind of hovers around in like screen space, which I kind of like. The reason why that is if I just had it on the screen as a piece of UI, it would just stay in the middle, and then you'd go over here and it would still be in the middle of the screen. And that was actually how I had it initially set up. I don't know if I recorded any of that in the previous section, but it didn't really do anything for me. You see, if we stop now, that enlarges, and we're back to the normal size of it. But I think while you are boosting, it's still big enough, you can still see it, even though it's smaller, to actually see it as you're boosting around. And again, when this environment isn't all grey as well, it will be a little bit easier to stand out. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that as an implementation. Very much inspired by Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom with the green stamina wheel. I do have to figure out how that will look once you upgrade it. I have a few ideas of how that will look. I also need to figure out how I upgrade something that looks like this, a diamond, how I upgrade that so the progress of the other max values of energy as you increase it throughout the game can then be spread between other diamond-shaped UI elements. That's going to be quite tricky to figure out, but future mech can deal with that. I think for now, we're just trying to get things implemented. And I know, there's people were talking, I've probably already talked about it in the devlog, but people weren't super happy with when I talked about HUD and the UI and stuff in a previous devlog. Let's just say that was a sick Matt fever dream, and let's start looking into this sort of stuff. I think the initial thing people might look at this and then think is, oh, can you do that with health on the other side, or move this to the other side and put health on that side, which I could do. It could be a game where there is no HUD, right? But then there are then a lot of problems with communicating things to the player, primarily what your health is at. If you are, say if you've taken some damage, does that health diamond then stay on the screen next to the character the whole time? It probably wouldn't be a diamond either. And how annoying is that going to look if you've got loads of health upgrades and you've taken half a chunk of health of damage and it just stays up on the screen until you heal? I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like health should be a permanent thing. And I wonder if, I don't know if there's anything in the documents when they were making Breath of the Wild specifically, if they ever tinkered with the health system ever being on screen all the time, because obviously the hearts are just always there in Zelda games. So it is interesting, because obviously in other previous Zelda games we've had the magic system and stuff, and that's always been in the top corner. But I think for this game, having the stamina at least be a thing that's like attached to the player, almost like, you know, it's in world, it's a thing that's actually there, I think is quite cool. And then in the future we can look at how we maybe will do the health system in the top left corner, and that can be something else entirely. But hopefully you're all happy with this and you like this more next to the character than you do the bar in the top left corner. I think it works pretty great. Pretty happy with it. So let's move on to the rest of the devlog, I guess. So this is a future version of PassMat, just interjecting, that's confusing, right? Just interjecting the devlog here, where I talked about when boosting, you know, how I've got this diamond energy meter in 3D space, so it like follows the character like this. I think some people will comment that it would be better if it was just fixed in the middle of the screen, and I know I talked about that in the section that we just did. There is a way to fix it, but it would remove some of like the, I think, the fluidity of the way the game feels. So if you look right now, as I move around, the camera kind of takes a little while to catch up with you. Let me show you how that might look if I changed it slightly. So here's how it looks, where the character will always be in the middle of the screen. So this would mean we could put that diamond on a fixed position in the middle of the screen, just over to the left, and it would just be a screen-based UI like it is in Zelda, like those other two things you can see in the top corner, the bars are. But you can see this is basically removing the camera lag. So now there's no camera lag at any point. You just move as you move. As the character moves, the camera moves. It feels a little bit more old school. I'm going to turn it back on, but I just kind of wanted you all to see. But yeah, this is how it would look like if the character was basically always in the middle of the screen. I'd love to hear what you all think. If you think this works better, if you think it works worse, I guess. It feels like there's less of a boost now as well, because the camera isn't like catching up to you all the time. Let me switch back over and I'll just show you some of that again. Okay, so we're back, and you can see there's now a little bit of lag. The character moves to the side, and the camera then moves, and vice versa. And if we boost, you see the character gets quite small on the screen because the camera needs to catch back up. And again, that weird FOV thing isn't happening now either, which is maybe the camera trying to catch up or whatever without the lag there. But it sounds bad, the word lag, but in this term, it's like a delay, almost like a camera delay, but Unreal Engine calls it a lag. But yeah, I just wanted to say that would be a way I could fix this to the screen so that it's always there. But the reason why I've got it in 3D space like this is so that the character can move around like this a little bit more freely, and you're not just fixed into the middle of the screen. I think I personally prefer that, but let me know if it really bothers you that, you know, while you're stood still, this thing moves around you like that. I don't know, I quite like that it's a piece of in-world UI almost, but it may irritate people, I don't know. Let me know. I just thought I'd interject with that. I know that was kind of a long ramble, but I just thought I'd explain that a little bit more and give the options of how it looks now and how it could work if we change things up a little bit. Anyway, we'll pass to another section of the devlog now. Still PassMat here, and I know a lot of people have talked about the animations for combat and stuff, and especially how when you're stood still, it looks very stiff. Someone commented it looks like you're waving a remote around, like a TV remote. Well, the main thing is I want to keep those sort of actions for moving, because it looks pretty good when you're moving. Maybe it needs to be sped up, but I actually quite like how everything else still animates, but that arm swings. And we can sheath the sword, and we can still pull this out. It's also a long time since we've been on this testing map, but I just thought I'd use this to demonstrate. So I want to very quickly now implement animations that just play when standing still versus moving. Okay, so that's implemented now. The animations are terrible, so please ignore those for now. But you can see these are now animations that affect the whole body while standing still. And then if I start moving and I'm walking around, I just swing the sword with my right arm, which is exactly what I wanted. I can sheath the sword away, and then I can pull it back out as I'm stood still. And I can attack while I'm stood still. if I really wanted to. All these things work fine. Yeah, they're fine. And you can see here if I approach the burrower, he's going to attack me, and I will attack him with those animations. I can shoot the sword away. Did you also notice something else that I've added there? Let me show you again. So if we approach the burrower again, you see we now have, we take like a flash of red when we get hit. Might be a little bit too long right now, I can shorten that. But also, the burrower takes that flash of red as well. Oh, or it just dies. If I spawn back in here, you'll see when I swing my sword, the burrower flashed red. But obviously, right now it doesn't have a death animation, but it would flash red finally on its death animation and then die. And yeah, the player has the red flash as well. So now I can implement a system where the player will take damage. He'll have a hit animation, a reaction, a knockback or something, and then he'll flash red. And the same with enemies, they'll do the same thing. I've already given the hopper a bit of a break between attacks, and I'll do the same with the burrower, because if we look again at the burrower here, he's pretty vicious with his attacks. Oh, although saying that he didn't do much there. There we go. I mean, there isn't... Oh, there is kind of a break between them. Yeah, okay. Maybe the burrower is okay, but the hopper was definitely a little bit strict on how quickly it would attack. And we should now see a little bit of a longer delay between attacks. So he does an attack, he waits. He does another attack, he waits. He does another attack. I think that's quite slow, but yeah, that could, that could be it. That's how we do it. He does a little attack. And again, I can make it so that he rotates towards the player and still heads towards the player in between those attacks to get ready for another one. But right now, I've just got it so that he attacks, and then moves, and then attacks, and then waits, and then moves again. It's a little tweak, and obviously you saw it with the burrower where there was those breaks between him attacking. So now the hopper has a similar system. I can actually show the burrower here. Again, for reference. See the attack, waits, attack, waits, attacks, waits. Okay, we need to look at that. Jesus. Getting flung up in the air now. Okay. Well, there we go. That's just a little bit of testing there with attacking, and yeah, we got the attack moves implemented. You see there's a bug with my combo system where sometimes it doesn't know if the sword is sheathed or not, but I can fix that again. I just need to alter my combo system. But the main goal here was to have a system where we have different animations that play when you're stood still versus when moving, which is exactly what we have now. I will obviously polish this and implement way better stuff in the future, but this is just a little implementation. Right, on to the rest of the devlog, because this was a weird little tangent. Okay, so in the background right now, you'll see me working on a few things, importing a few things, getting some things in-game. So I thought I'd show this, and while this is going on in the background, I wanted to answer some questions, actually, specifically. So what I did is, because we launched the Discord last week, brand new Discord server for the game, you can come over there, you can chat, you can ask questions. I thought, let's grab some of those questions and answer them in a devlog right here. First up, Veniz had a few different questions. First up is, any plans for a skill tree? No, there's no skill tree planned or anything like that. You'll kind of gain abilities as you go through the game. Will there be some sort of other collectible things? So yeah, I've talked about how you'll be able to get like basically the equivalent of heart pieces and energy bar upgrades and stuff like that. They'll be in the world to go and collect. But there'll also be lore, like data pads and things like that you can go around and explore and find. And they're all optional things. How many dungeons do you have in mind? So there's going to be 4 planets, and each planet will have a dungeon on it, and that dungeon will be kind of the main area where you do like the puzzling, while the world, the planet before that, the area before you go into the dungeon, is more focused on exploration. Will there be big boss fights? Yeah, so every dungeon will end with a big boss fight. That is definitely going to happen. Out in the main open world as well, there will be smaller like mini bosses and larger one-off creatures that you'll fight as well. And finally, Venez asked if there was any plans for any side quests or optional content. I mean, there's no large questing or anything like that in the game that you do from the main objective, but you can go out of your way to discover things and find things, and there'll be little hidden things in the world. So there's that, but there's no additional quest other than your main goal. Pendragon Game Art asked, any other names planned for the game? Yeah, some people have actually said they really like Space 64. It's definitely not going to be called that. It probably won't even have the 64 moniker in its title either. Some people have thrown around a few good ideas like Cosmos, but spelt differently. Although that makes me think of like Xenosaga, Xenoblade and stuff like that when you think of like Cosmos from those games. Or Cos from Bloodborne, from the Old Hunters DLC, kind of makes me think of Cos there with a K, right? Yeah, right now I don't have any other ideas for names, and I'm not really necessarily looking for one yet, because I feel like the ideas people will come up with will be so different from what the game's actually going to turn into. When I start explaining more of the lore and going into the story, I think that is when we will kind of dive deeper into naming and what this game could be called. Marathon Guy Leet 1337 asks, do you have any plans for franchising and sequels? No, I don't know. The game, I have a sort of idea for how the game's going to end in terms of what it will progress into. But if I ever follow that up, that's a whole different discussion entirely. Definitely not looking into franchising. Hey, if anyone other than me plays this game at the end of the day, then that's going to be a real surprise, because I'm just making a game that I want to make and then telling a story I want to tell. If anyone else gets any level of enjoyment from it when it all is said and done, that's the only thing I'm looking for. Goat Bucket asks, do you have any plans to add NPCs? So the normal sense of an NPC, like a character you'll walk up to in a town or something like that, no, there won't be any NPCs. There'll be characters that you'll meet in cutscenes in unique ways, and there'll be a companion character who does join you on your quest throughout the whole game from the very beginning, which is technically an NPC, and they do talk to you and they do assist you and things like that, but that's still a little way for me to develop yet any further. But I guess that's the closest thing to an NPC that you'll see in the game. Holophobia asked a bunch of questions, including, have you tested how the platform leaping mechanic works in relation to moving platforms that move up and down, left and right, in and out? No, I haven't, but that is something I do want to test, because I do want platforms like that in the dungeon. I do want sort of like elevators that move up and down. I want, lifts that go back and forth. Obviously, the dungeon itself is going to be this very alien place where everything is kind of alive and moving and things like that. So I think testing that out is a really good idea, and I will do that in a future devlog. Probably pretty soon I'll build some sort of really quick, just platforms that move around. Is there any other way the community to get involved to assist you with development besides becoming a member and showing support? That's a good question. I mean, for me, if you want to support the game and you want to help out, just subscribing to the YouTube channel and hitting like on videos and leaving comments, that's the main thing that I really appreciate. Obviously, the joining the channel as a member or sending a super thanks, they're like additional things that if you really want to, support development, you can do that. Question 3 was, do you have a general development pipeline in mind? I mean, I'm a little bit haphazard with it. I kind of do things here and there, but the main goal for me right now, in terms of like a larger development plan, is hopefully by the end of the year, so in about 6 months' time, I would like the first planet to be fully playable. So I'd like to have a very basic version of the intro cutscene in. You crash land, you do that, you can go through the full first planet, activate 10 different beacons, you can go into the dungeon will be there, you can go through the dungeon, and you can reach the end of the dungeon, and there'll be a boss there. That means that I have to get a full new enemy type built, and all of their different variations within that enemy type, because it's a race of enemies, and an enemy of that, like a big boss version, which I guess is the big thing I will reveal now. In the dungeon, you won't be fighting any of the creatures or monsters from the outside. I have some ideas where they might appear in there, but that's a different thing entirely for the far future. But the main plan with the dungeons is you'll be fighting something else than what you've been fighting on the outside. But going back to the original question of, do you have a general development pipeline in mind? I don't really have like things written down that I'm like this week I'll do this week I'll do that. I just kind of do what I feel like, which sounds a little bit dangerous in the realm of development, and I think as things get a little bit more fleshed out, I will definitely start having a more structured pipeline. But right now I'm just sort of like figuring out what does work and what doesn't work, and then the things that do work are the things that I'm developing more. Like right now, I don't think any of the AI in the game works. It kind of works, but it's not where I want it to be. So there'll be a devlog or two in the future where I sit down and I just work out the kinks of the AI system and kind of go over that. Last time we built a very simple flying AI that was so basic and needed so much improvement that I'll probably start from scratch almost the next time I revisit that, but I know it works and it can work. Like a flying creature will work to some extent, and that was kind of what I was doing there. It was almost like a test for myself where I was like, can I do this? Is this something I can actually do and implement in the game? And I was able to, and obviously over time, the AI will, evolve and grow, although we don't want it taking over the world. Question 4. How faithful are you planning to keep the game to the N64 era? Are you looking to just emulate the visual style, or are you also planning to restrict game features that would not have been possible at the time? It's a good question. I don't know if the boosting system, or even the gliding system, would have been things some people would have put into N64 games. For me, I'm not really limiting myself to what I've seen or what had been done in N64 games. I'm kind of just letting the story and the world develop around ideas that I come up with and the things I want to implement, and also the suggestions I get that I think will work really well for the game. So I'm not really thinking about what, were in N64 games. I'm kind of just creating my own game that just follows some of the visual style, I guess, of the N64 and PS1 era. But I don't want to create a PS1 game. I don't want to create an N64 game. I want to create my own game that is inspired by those games, but isn't trying to recreate those things exactly. Like, I don't want to have to, cut corners and simplify things just for the sake of it. If the story asks for something in a really particular way, and an N64 or a PS1 could never have done that, that doesn't mean I'm not going to end up doing it. I still want this game to feel modern, but very much inspired by that era of games. And Pestmat is back. Hello, everyone. So, you probably just saw me working on a few things. I'll talk about that in a second, but hopefully you all enjoyed that Q&A. And if you wanted to know more about me or something like that, you go check out the video on the channel called Memory Lane. I'll add it, if I remember to, in the top right corner is where you can click it, or just go to the channel and you'll find it pretty easily. It basically talks about my time making Halo Custom Edition maps when I was a teenager, and revisiting that after 10 years. So yeah, if you want to know more about me or my sort of methodology when it comes to creating things for games, I would go check that video out. Anyway, let's talk about a few things. First, I just want to revisit the boosting, the stamina bar thing. As you can see here, it has now been improved a little bit. The red section is now within the blue section. Before it was after it, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, and it didn't really show what amount of energy you were using, but now it accurately does. So if I boost along here, you can see it's chipping away, and then it fills back up. But let's get to the meat and potatoes, as they say, with a section that I just was working on in the background of the Q&A, which is the beacon. So right now, this is all pretty early days. I want to have things like where you touch a beacon, you see his hand reach out and touch a platform. I want the textures to look better than just these little red squiggly lines, basically. There's a lot of stuff I want to do, but the actual implementation is fully working now. So if I activate this beacon, it will animate, it will come alive, it'll send a beam into the sky, and then we cut over to the dungeon, and we see that the dungeon is also receiving that beam, and it brings one of the pieces to life. What I could do here very easily, if we wanted it to be a different pillar, is I can just click onto the actual beacon here, and I can change the beacon number to number 2, which I just did off screen because you can't quite see everything on this monitor when I record. And I activate this one now. This sequence will be the same every single time, but now the beacon is going to be a different one. It won't be that first one now. See, it's the second one. I could randomize this as well, so that every beacon randomly chooses one of those until there's none left. I could do that. Right now I've just got it in a sequential order, but it could just be totally random as well. So just talking through this very, very briefly, I'm pretty happy with most of this. Particles will change, I'll update things. I love this beam shooting down. This camera angle I'm not super sold on, but I like this one. And then that basically tells you everything you need to know. You've activated the beacon, you've rebuilt something at the dungeon, and over time we'll animate things as well on top of this. So, for example, let's go back to the dungeon again. So when this all happens, we cut to the dungeon, and initially there's going to be none of these lights that you see on it. All these green lines and everything, they're going to be off. But every time this thumps down, it's going to grow, or glow a little bit, and then be 10% brighter. And then every single time it'll get brighter and brighter and brighter until you've got all 10 done and the dungeon is fully lit and fully alive. And here we are, we're at the end of the devlog. A little bit of a weird one this week, I know. There's been some stuff going on in my personal life that has kind of thrown me a little bit, but we'll be back on track soon, don't worry about that. First off, just let me say thank you to our channel members. There are 4 this week. They are Dan Sanger, David Nokala, Java Matrix, and Mazzy. Thank you again to everyone who becomes a channel member or sends super thanks. It is much appreciated and all goes towards the support and development of Space 64. Talking of, channel members will get exclusive content such as community posts, and they get a role on the Discord server now, so make sure you've joined up with the Discord server in general, even if you're not a channel member. We have over 60 members there already, and there's some great conversations, great feedback, great discussions going on there. And obviously the Q&A from earlier in the devlog, I sourced fully from the new Discord, so go join up. And yeah, on the topic of, I guess, devlogs in general, and what my future plans are going forward, now we're in double digits, devlog 10 here. Well, next week there won't be a devlog, which again is primarily, it's a mixture of things. I wanted to do a progress update, so every 10 devlogs I want to do a little progress update where I kind of just walk through the game silently, but I'll do like an audio pass over it, so you can all hear the game how I kind of hear it in my head. And, you know, we'll grab some music that'll set the mood and stuff like that. None of it will be final, but it might just help, you know, as well, people who haven't been able to watch the 5+ hours of devlog I've released, they'll be able to jump into that, realize where we're at, understand what the game is, and then jump in at devlog 11 and keep watching with us as well. So next week there'll be that, and channel members will get an exclusive video, which is going to be a director's commentary of that, where I'll kind of talk over it and ramble and pause and talk about things. So I hope you're all excited for that. That'll be next Friday, and then devlog 11 will be the following Friday, and we'll be then back into the regular weekly releases of devlogs until we hit devlog 20, and then between 20 and 21 we'll do another progress update. And I think that'll be quite nice to have little progress updates for people who haven't watched the devlogs, can't watch all of them, or just for people in general who just want to see the game being played. I think that'll be nice. So with that, I want to say thank you all so much for watching as usual. I really do appreciate everyone with your comments and the time you spent watching the videos. It has been an amazing 10 weeks releasing these, and I really do appreciate that. Also, another big thing I want to talk about is after these next 10, you know, when we're at 2021 devlogs, we're probably going to be on the other side of summer, which is really exciting. But at the same time, I have a goal for what I want to achieve with this game by the end of the year. I want this whole first planet to be playable, not polished, not, you know, I don't want to have like everything locked down and everything, but I want the full space to be modeled, all the beacons to be in place. I want the little areas where we can get health upgrades and energy upgrades, all of that placed in to the map, playable, textured up, you know, like it actually looks like, you know, the other areas of the map that I've been showing you. And I also talked about in the Q&A that there's going to be bosses. I'm not sure we'll get to those anytime soon, but that I do want by the end of the year for you to be able to get to at least the boss room, which means completing the dungeon, the puzzles, progressing through that, meeting the enemy in the dungeon, going through that, and then, you know, maybe we'll start looking at concepting that boss creature, figure, enemy that is going to be at the very end of the dungeon. So many people have been making guesses on that, just in general, like, oh, you're going to add this creature, or in the dungeons are there going to be these things. Once I show you all the intro cinematic and you meet the enemy, people will either be really confused, really happy, or really sad. You're going to be one of 3. Let's see. Anyway, thank you again. I just rambled on for way too long. Thank you all so much for watching. And yeah, I've had a bit of a weird week or two, so you know, with personal life stuff. So I thank you all so much for your support. It means so much to me that I'm making this game, and you all seem to enjoy it. You know, it's been 10 weeks of these devlogs now, and I'm very, very excited. And I think a lot of people can tell of where I want this game to go, and really the story I want to tell. So with that, again, I just want to thank you all, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks' time for devlog 11, but stay tuned for next week for the progress update video. And I'll see you all next time. Goodbye!